The studio lights of Jimmy Kimmel Live burned bright against the polished floor, reflecting off the cameras like tiny suns. It was supposed to be another routine late-night taping, another night of jokes, applause, and the familiar rhythm of satire that had become second nature for Jimmy Kimmel. The audience laughed as the monologue rolled forward, each punchline landing with precision. But there was a tension underneath the humor that few in the room could quite place yet. Across the country, in a quiet corner of a sprawling estate in Florida, a television flickered in a room filled with dark wood and gold trim. The man watching it sat stiffly in a leather chair, his expression tightening with each passing second. Donald Trump had seen plenty of late-night jokes about himself before. For years, they had been part of the nightly routine of American television. But tonight felt different. Back in the studio, Kimmel paused mid-monologue. The laughter softened as he leaned against his desk, shuffling a stack of papers with deliberate theatricality. "Now," he said slowly, letting the moment stretch. "This next part isn't a joke." The audience shifted in their seats. Kimmel held up the papers, his expression suddenly serious. Cameras zoomed closer, the red tally lights glowing like warning signals. "Earlier today," he said, "my legal team filed a lawsuit." For a heartbeat, the room went silent. Then the name dropped like thunder, against Donald Trump. Gasps rippled through the audience. A few nervous laughs followed, the kind people make when they're unsure whether something is part of the show or something very real. In Florida, Trump leaned forward. The remote clicked louder than it should have in the quiet room as he turned up the volume. Kimmel continued, explaining that the lawsuit centered around statements, accusations, and what he described as a long campaign of misinformation. He delivered the details with the calm confidence of someone who had been waiting for this moment. But the real shock came when he held up a printed document and said, almost casually, "And yes, this was filed just hours ago." The crowd erupted in a mix of cheers and stunned murmurs. Cameras caught audience members covering their mouths, whispering to each other on the television screen. Kimmel leaned closer to the camera. "Tonight," he said, "I guess the jokes are over." In Florida, Trump stood up so quickly his chair scraped across the marble floor. For several seconds, he simply stared at the screen. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. Then the reaction came. "What?" he snapped, voice echoing across the room that a staff member standing near the doorway froze. Trump gestured toward the television. "Did you see this? Did you hear what he just said?" The staffer nodded cautiously. Trump paced across the room, his footsteps sharp against the floor. The television continued playing Kimmel's show in the background as the host moved into the next segment. But Trump wasn't listening anymore. He grabbed his phone. Within minutes, aides were calling lawyers. Messages were flying across private chats. Screens lit up in offices from Washington to New York as people tried to understand what had just happened on live television. Meanwhile, the clip was spreading online at lightning speed. Headlines began appearing within minutes. Late night bombshell. Kimmel files lawsuit against Trump. Announced live on TV. Trump targeted in surprise legal move. Back at the studio, Kimmel resumed his usual tone, joking again, smiling as if the announcement had been just another segment. But the moment had already detonated across the internet. In Florida, Trump was no longer watching the show. He was standing at a long table covered with documents and phones as advisors joined the room one by one. "Get the lawyers on," he said sharply. One aide held up a tablet showing the viral clip. "It's everywhere," the aide said quietly. Trump stared at the screen as the clip replayed. Kimmel's voice echoed again, against Donald Trump. Trump shook his head slowly. "Oh, he wants a fight," he muttered. The room went silent. Then he turned toward his legal team, eyes blazing with determination. "Well," he said, "he's going to get one." Outside, the night in Florida was calm and quiet. But inside the room, the political storm was just beginning. And across the country, millions of people were still replaying the same moment. The instant when a late-night joke turned into a legal earthquake on live television. No one knew yet how far the shockwaves would travel, but everyone could feel them coming. By sunrise the next morning, the clip from Jimmy Kimmel Live had spread across every corner of the internet. News anchors replayed the moment frame by frame. Commentators debated the legal implications, while social media exploded with arguments, memes, and speculation. What had begun as a late-night television moment had turned into a national spectacle. In a conference room filled with screens and legal folders, Donald Trump stood at the center of a circle of advisors. Phones buzzed nonstop on the table. One of the attorneys slid a document across the desk. "We've reviewed the filing," he said carefully. "It's serious. but it's also very public. Trump barely glanced down at the pages. Of course it's public, he replied. He announced it on television. Across the room, another aide pointed to a screen where the viral clip was playing again. The audience reaction echoed through the speakers. The gasp, the applause, the sudden realization that the moment was real. Trump folded his arms. Late-night comedy, he said, shaking his head. They think they can say anything. His lawyers exchanged looks. Sir, one of them said, this will likely become a long legal process. Trump leaned forward against the table, his expression sharpening. Then we make it longer, he replied. Meanwhile, across the country in Los Angeles, Jimmy Kimmel walked through the hallway outside his studio. The building felt unusually tense. Staff members whispered in corners while producers checked their phones every few seconds. The announcement had worked exactly as intended. Every network was talking about it. Every headline mentioned the same two names. Kimmel paused outside his dressing room, staring for a moment at the framed posters from past seasons of Jimmy Kimmel Live. For years, the show had thrived on satire, poking fun at politics, celebrities, and the strange theater of public life. But this moment felt heavier that he knew the reaction would be massive. He knew it would trigger outrage, debate, and endless commentary. Still, the scale of the response was staggering that a producer approached him quietly. The phones haven't stopped, she said. Every network wants a statement. Kimmel exhaled slowly. Tell them they'll get one tonight, he replied. Back in Florida, Trump stepped outside onto a wide terrace overlooking the water. The morning sun reflected across the surface like shards of glass. He held his phone in one hand, scrolling through headlines. Everywhere he looked, the same story. Kimmel versus Trump. Late-night lawsuit shock. Comedy host takes legal action. Trump's jaw tightened that a legal advisor stepped outside behind him. The press is asking for your response, the advisor said. Trump lowered the phone slowly. They want a response, he said. The advisor nodded. For a moment, Trump simply stared across the water. Then he smiled. Good, he said quietly. He turned back toward the building, already dialing a number. Let's give them one. Hours later, the statement appeared online, spreading as quickly as the original announcement. Trump's response was fiery, defiant, and unmistakably direct. Within minutes, news networks were reading it aloud on air. Commentators leaned toward their microphones, sensing the beginning of something larger than a typical celebrity feud in Los Angeles. Kimmel sat behind his desk again that evening, the studio lights blazing as always. The audience buzzed with anticipation. Everyone knew the story now. Everyone knew what had happened the night before. The band finished playing. Kimmel looked out over the crowd, letting the silence build. Then he leaned into the microphone. Well, he said, smiling slightly, I guess things got interesting. The audience burst into laughter and applause. But far away in Florida, Trump was watching again. And this time, the battle between the late-night stage and the political arena had become something far bigger than a joke. Two powerful voices. Two very different worlds. And a courtroom somewhere in the future where their collision might finally play out. For now, though, the drama continued exactly where it had begun, under bright television lights, with millions watching every word.